Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media. We have a very special interview. This is with a progressive candidate who is in the state of Washington, running in the 6th Congressional District. And again, to all our viewers and subscribers, the whole purpose of doing these interviews is to reminding all of you that there's a lot of progressives and independents that are running for change in the United States Senate and House, and also in various numerous state districts as well. And we feel that it's very important to make sure that their voices are heard, because a lot of attention is on the presidential election cycle, which is very important. But there's also a lot of change that can be done in the United States Senate and House and at various state level districts. And I'm very proud to introduce a very special guest. She is running as a progressive. She's a Democratic Socialist. Her name is Rebecca Parson. Rebecca, for our viewers and subscribers, could you please introduce yourself, give us a background about why you're running in the 6th Congressional District in the state of Washington?
Yeah, and thanks, Kit, for having me. So I am running in Washington's 6th Congressional District, and the reason I'm running is that we're a solid working class blue district, very blue district, safe Democratic district, but we have a representative who just represents corporate interests and not what's best for our district. For example, he voted to cut food stamps for 1.7 million people. We have 15% of the district on food stamps in one town that's as high as 25%. And so it just goes on and on like that. The Green New Deal, Medicare for all these policies that I really support that our incumbent doesn't, and other things that I'm really excited about, like national rent control and more investment in social housing that will really benefit our district. And it's a large district. I've been going around talking to people since December. And I think that the progressive Democratic Socialist policies that I'm fighting for are what's best for the people in the district.
Okay, so I just want to also for you to explain in detail some of your past experience of being running for nonprofits or working with nonprofits, as well as helping organize community groups. How's that helped you in regards to preparing for this challenge against going up against the incumbent?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good question that I don't get a lot. And so I sit on the Tacoma Commission on Disabilities, where we liaise with the city to let them know about issues affecting people with disabilities. I'm currently working on a project to bring a wheelchair accessible taxi service to Tacoma, which is lacking right now. I've also been a human rights observer for the Zapatistas in Mexico. Went on two 10-day trips to a Zapatista village in the jungle there and acted as a human rights observer. I've been a tenants' rights organizer because I myself am a renter. I'm very active with my DSA chapter, and I was a delegate to the National Convention in Atlanta this summer. And all of those experiences are pretty different from a traditional politician. And I think the advantage it gives me is that I just have constant interaction, both through just being myself, a renter and an everyday person, but then also all these interactions with regular working class everyday people, instead of having my worldview informed almost solely by corporations and lobbyists.
Now, you're also, as you mentioned before, Democratic Socialist. You've organized with the group. You've mentioned that you were at one of the conventions in Atlanta. So when you're out there talking to potential voters, when you're knocking, or when you have your team canvassing on doors, what is the initial response from voters when they hear you say that you're a Democratic Socialist? Because in corporate media, the word Democratic Socialist or Socialist is taken out of context, and then we get all this propaganda and Red Scare. So what's their reaction when they hear that you're with DSA and that you're fighting for these progressive policies?
Well, I think what's interesting is when people hear the policies, they have no problem with it. Like I was out with a group canvassing a few months ago in the rural part of my district in Aberdeen, which is actually where Kurt Cobain was from. This town has a lot of issues with homelessness, with drug addiction, and a lot of poverty and neglect from politicians and just society at large. And I was out with this group canvassing for the Green New Deal because we wanted to make sure that rural Washington gets a say in what is in the Green New Deal, so it doesn't just benefit the cities and towns, cities and big towns. And we went to people, we didn't ask them who they voted for in the presidential election, but a few people volunteered that they voted for Trump. And then we would show them a list of policies and say, which of these policies would be most important for you to have in the Green New Deal? And it was essentially a laundry list of progressive policies like universal free healthcare, free childcare, free college, all this stuff, a federal jobs guarantee, more union jobs, all of that. And the Trump voters even looked at it and said, well, I don't know, it's hard to say because I really like all of these policies. And many of these policies are Democratic Socialist policies. It's about making our economy democratic as well as our politics. And so the thing with the label Democratic Socialist, what I find is that people really connect with the policies. And then if they ask about socialism, democratic socialism, and I talk to them about it, I just say that it's about making sure the economy works for all of us and is not rigged by corporations and politicians. And a lot of people really resonate with the idea that the corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans are both bought and sold by corporations and rich people and lobbyists, and they really resonate with that. And actually, this doesn't pertain to my district, but it's an interesting anecdote. When we were in Atlanta for the National DSA convention, we were at, I believe it's the only union hotel in Atlanta,
Oh,
and
wow.
the people, the employees and workers there would say to us, because I think there were over 1,000 delegates, and so we're pretty different from their usual convention attendees, and so we got comments saying like, "Y'all are really different from most convention people," and we're like, "Yep." And they're like, "What are you about?" And I heard this conversation. They just come up and say like, "Who are you?" And we're like, "Well, we're the Democratic Socialists of America." And like, "What is that?" And we'd tell them, and they were really interested and into it. People had never heard of it. They were just so intrigued by how different we were, and also that we were treating them respectfully and leaving them tips. And they even had, some people would leave abolished ICE stickers and along with their tip. And the workers, like the hotel workers who came in to clean our rooms, they added like Solidaridad and like, fist, and they even like drew in our icon and stuff. So I think when everyday people, you just connect with them as a real person and say what you're fighting for, the socialist thing isn't this big boogeyman.
Now, I want to just pivot us a little bit. Now, on your campaign website, you mentioned how you're going up against the incumbent and how he's the chair of the New Democrats. Can you explain what the current incumbent? I mean, you mentioned earlier what he has or has not done and who he's associated with, mostly big money. But can you explain who the New Democrats are, especially in Washington State, and really what the current incumbent has been doing for the people of the 6th congressional district?
Yeah, so the New Democrats the New Democrats coalition represents the third way part of the Democratic Party, which Obama and Clinton were also part of. And basically, the way to win over voters is to triangulate, become as centrist as possible, turn yourself into a Republican light. And the New Democrats represent that conservative Democratic coalition in Congress. They take a lot of money. They raise millions per year. Kilmer boasted once that when he was the vice chair of fundraising, he upped their fundraising from 3 million one year to 4 million one year. He gets money from the coalition every year, including when he was their vice chair of fundraising. So he's fundraising money for them and then farming it out to everyone, including himself. And what they represent is just a corporate solution to everything. So they are not for Medicare for all. They're not for the Green New Deal. I highly doubt they are ever going to be for universal rent control or for 12 million new units of public housing in the next 10 years. And unfortunately, Washington State, which is really awesome, is one of the most progressive states in the country. But what's unfortunate is that the Washington State delegation is very conservative, and not just the Republicans who are in the delegation. Really, the only true progressive that I would say we have is Pramila Jayapal. The rest, including Derek Kilmer, are just conservative Democrats who talk a good game about gay rights and women's rights. They say the right thing, but they're essentially Republican. And Derek Kilmer is the chair of that in Congress. And what's interesting is working your way up in the New Democrats coalition and becoming the chair as he is now is what you do when you want to be Speaker of the House. It's what Joe Crowley did. And so people were saying, "Oh, AOC knocked out Joe Crowley. He was in line to be the Speaker of the House." Derek Kilmer is building his career so that he can do that, because this is one of the positions you take when you want to do that. So by taking him out, we would really send a message that these third way centrist policies have not only failed, but we know they've failed and they're on their way out. And progressivism and democratic socialism is coming in its place because it's what's actually best for the people. And we would also be cutting off the money supply, because the way that he buys a lot of people's favor is by raising all this money through himself and also the New Democrats, and then farming it out to the DCCC, to himself, and to other establishment Democrats to buy their favor. And if we just cut off that money supply, that would go a long way, just towards stopping this kind of constant merry-go-round of corporate fundraising, at least from him, and at least not have our district be part of that. Because
Wow.
we're not Seattle. Like, we're just south of Seattle, but we're very different. Would highly doubt. I don't know if we have any billionaires in our district. I highly doubt we do. A large part of my district is timber country, and it used to supply. It was the timber capital of the world. It supplied the boards that constructed houses all over America after World War II. And the timber industry collapsed. Weyerhaeuser and other companies just extracted our resources, took their profit and left. And there's just a gaping hole where jobs used to be. And so this kind of billionaire corporatist stuff really doesn't work for our district. And it's also, given his position, his fundraising, being chair of the New Democrats, and also a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is literally funded by Republican millionaires and dark money. Defeating him would really send a message across the country that this, has got to stop.
Wow. So basically, this fight in the 6th Congressional District will be a key battle in regards for how this 2020 election cycle will turn out, and could probably send a message to the corporate Democrats in Washington, D.C. So then this opens up to something that I've noticed on your campaign website, and something we talk a lot about here on Hard Lens Media, and that's money in politics and getting it out. Look, thanks to Citizens United and McCutcheon's decision, money is speech, corporations are people, and Democrats and Republicans in the United States Senate and House are bought and sold. Even presidential candidates are bought and sold. So since this is an issue that you're fighting for, can you explain to our viewers and subscribers really how would you address with getting money out of politics and dealing with Citizens United and the McCutcheon's decision? What is your plan to really address these two devastating decisions that's crippling our democracy?
Yeah, I would overturn Citizens United, and I would also look at initiating a public financing system for elections. So Seattle has something called democracy dollars, and they have it in addition to all the corporate stuff that goes on. But if we eliminate corporate financing of elections and instead replace it with publicly funded financing for elections, that would be just transformative for our elections and having them be really driven by the people and not corporations. And the other thing that's really, really amazing about democracy dollars that doesn't get talked about a lot is that in Seattle, everyone is given $200 to spend on elections, and they can go to anybody they want, $1 here or $200 all to one person. And the Democratic Socialist, Sean Scott, who's running for Seattle City Council, I believe last time I checked, got the most democracy dollars. So that tells you something. And then also in the first election when they had democracy dollars, Seattle's turnout went way, way up. Because when people actually have some money and they can give it to the candidates they like, they feel more invested and then they're more likely to vote. And so that's another underappreciated aspect of publicly financing elections, is that we would get a lot more people participating in the democratic process.
As it should be. And I think it's very important that we get more people involved this 2020 election cycle. It's just not only just the presidential race people need to be paying attention to, but it's the individual congressional races that are happening in their district. And, there's a lot of issues that are impacting Americans, especially, with money in politics. There's our clear issue of climate change, and then there's also the war on drugs. And on your campaign website, you mentioned the opioid crisis in Washington state. I mean, it's a crisis that's happening nationwide. Can you explain really what's really happening with, I guess, people who are addicted to opioids, especially in the 6th Congressional District? What is the current situation there?
It's pretty dire. So there's, in one county in my district, Clallam County, there was a report in the newspaper that over a 6-year period, they found that 50 to 60 addictive opioid prescription pills were prescribed per capita. So 50 to 60 per capita. And they now have the highest OD death rate in the state. And that is not a coincidence. And Derek Kilmer takes money from Big Pharma, including from a Big Pharma PAC, whose members are being sued for manufacturing the opioid epidemic. And one of those companies actually was found guilty. I think they came to an agreement, or they were found guilty, I'm not sure which, but they had to pay out a lot of money. And they manufactured the opioid epidemic that is currently devastating our district. And it's all over in Tacoma, where I'm from, in a more urban area, and then in the rural parts of the district. And you have, especially on the Olympic Peninsula, which is a just absolutely beautiful, gorgeous area. And, like I said, timber used to be really big. It collapsed. And now there's just, what I think drives a lot of this is just an epidemic of despair. There are no jobs. There aren't enough jobs. The ones that are there don't pay enough. In order to live, you have to work 3 or 4 jobs, each one at 20 hours a week, so they don't have to give you healthcare or any benefits. And there's just like nothing. People feel that life is impossible and you can't afford enough to live. And so they try to check out. They want to check out. And the way they check out is with alcoholism, with alcohol or drugs, and increasingly opioids. And, with Representative Kilmer taking money from the people who manufacture the epidemic, he is not going to be able to do anything to fix it, because his view and his solutions are influenced by the people that cause the very problem that we're dealing with. And then we also just don't have enough treatment facilities. So here in Tacoma, we have one detox facility in the entire city that takes Medicaid. And so if you are poor or working poor or just essentially not rich, that is your one place in the entire city to get treatment. And a lot of people don't realize if you decide to, with alcohol, if you decide to quit drinking, you can't just quit at home and hope it'll be okay. If the disease has progressed pretty far, it is actually lethal and you need to be medically detoxed. And so this one facility is available. It's always full. They never have beds. You have to call at 12:01 a.m. every day to see if they have any beds, and they don't. And the only other thing you can do is go to ER, and ER will take you overnight and then release you. But detox really should be 3 days. I have friends who've gone through this. I've taken them to the ER when they were almost at a lethal blood alcohol limit. They stay overnight, and then they find this one place in Tacoma that, because after detox, you need at least, 30, 60-day treatment facility. And then that treatment facility isn't available for a couple weeks. And it's just, politicians talk a good game about the opioid epidemic, about the addiction epidemic, whatever it is, if it's alcohol, meth, opioids, whatever it is. But people actually need treatment. And that's what Medicare for All, single payer with no co-pays or deductibles, where if you have an alcoholic or an addict and they say, I am ready to get clean and sober, they can just walk into the facility and get the treatment they need right away. And that's what I want to see happen.
All right. So I just want to do a quick follow-up in regards to this ridiculous war on drugs. The opioid crisis is helping the prison industrial complex get more people in jail. And of course, it's not going to help people recover, especially from their addiction. So what is the influence of, I guess, the prison industrial complex in the 6th congressional district in Washington state? What is the current situation with the war on drugs over there and the influence of major prisons?
We have a number of private prisons, and then just out in Tacoma, but just outside my district, we have one of the largest private immigration prisons in the country. And the people there are just treated abysmally. They are paid $1 a day to work, and in order to get shampoo, they have to pay for it and cost $8 for a little bottle of shampoo. So imagine working 8 days so that you can wash your hair for a couple days. That's what they deal with. When they are there, the clothes they are given include dirty used underwear from other people. They have adults getting chicken pox, which for adults is very dangerous. And then instead of getting treatment, they're just put in solitary confinement. So that is a serious concern and something that, I've spoken. So the people who are detained there and then people who are on the outside form a group called La Resistencia that has been fighting it for years. And I met with them, and I've been inside the facility and met with somebody who's detained there. And they've told me that Derek Kilmer has never once met with them. And so that's the thing, is that, it's just over the line of my district, but it's in my hometown, it's in Tacoma. And this inaction, Derek Kilmer is smart enough not to take money from Geo Group and the Core Civic, but he takes money from all the secondary companies that fund the immigration industrial prison complex. All of the ones, they provide the transportation, the infrastructure, the tech, all of that. He takes money from all of them. It's just a giant, disgusting, corrupt web of companies that provide services to maintain our unjust immigration system. But then in terms of non-immigration private prisons, that is also an issue. I saw a statistic recently that Grays Harbor County, which is a rural county in my district, has the highest rate of juvenile detention in the country. And kids are detained for just stuff like skipping school or running away. But it's never asked, why are they running away? Are they why are they running away? Is there something going on at home that we could help with? No, just throw them in prison and throw them in juvie. It's just stuff like that we've really got to change.
Wow. And in regards to the current incumbent, has he ever done any town halls with meeting with constituents? Because this seems to be a very serious issue that's impacting the six. I mean, you're telling us right now that there's prisoners, who have to work basically 8 hours a day, and they have to basically then buy like a small bottle of shampoo just to wash their hair. Or there's the very fact that there's an opioid crisis. There's a lack of available jobs in that area. Has the current incumbent ever done a town hall? Has he met with constituents?
He does do town halls, but he has his presentations very carefully planned ahead of time. And then his staff carefully selects people from the audience that they know are not, because, they know the activists who come again and again, and the ones who are going to ask them about Medicare for All or the Green New Deal. So they're very careful not to choose those people and choose, not give those people the mic. And then, at this last round of town halls he did, for example, he had the questions that he thought was going to be asked or that his staff would allow to be asked. And when that would come up, he would just pull up the slide on his PowerPoint that corresponded to that question that he had prepared ahead of time so he could give his pre-planned speech. So that's really the kind of constituent interaction we have.
Wow.
Where he makes a show, he does the town halls, but he's not listening. He's been pushed for years and years on supporting Medicare for all, for example, and then more recently the Green New Deal. But in a meeting with activists, his staff told those activists that he will not support the Green New Deal and that he cannot sign the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge because it would violate House ethics rules. And it's like, what twisted upside down logic are you using there? It's just, straight from Nancy Pelosi, Green New Dream stuff. So.
So yeah, I'm glad you were talking about the Green New Deal, and you mentioned earlier in this interview on your campaign website, you stated you're for the Green New Deal. Exactly. There's a good chance potentially you could become the new congressional representative in the 6th district in Washington State. So what is your plan to really help implement the Green New Deal? As we all know, climate change is a reality. It's going to impact not only the people here in the United States, but it's an international crisis. So what are you going to do to really fight for it and introduce it in the United States Congress?
I'm going to co-sponsor it and then do everything I can to make it happen. And then if Bernie Sanders is president, back him up in that legislation. Something that, it would be a dream if Bernie Sanders were president. I'm a huge supporter of his. He also needs a Congress to back him up and make these things happen. And so I'll co-sponsor the legislation and then fight for it to actually happen. And then make sure that it includes things that would be really beneficial for my district. So we have a lot of coastal land in my district. And a lot of that is tribal land. And for example, one tribal village is having to relocate, and over $1 million is being spent to relocate them from right by the water further upland because of rising ocean levels. And it's a sacred space. They've lived there for a very long time. And so it's really tragic that they're having to move. There's the Makah Nation, which is if you imagine the northwesternmost tip of the continental United States. It's a beautiful area, very remote. The Makah Nation has lived there for over 4,500 years. And they have a school there that's in the tsunami zone. And tsunamis are just going to get worse as the ocean levels keep rising. And their current tsunami evacuation plan is to just run a mile uphill and hope it works out okay. And
that's not good.
No. And so as part of the Green New Deal, we need to have more money for communities that can't afford to protect themselves. Rich people can move upland, they can buy, higher elevation and, try to protect themselves with their money, but most of us can't do that. And so there needs to be more money to help with that. And then one of the key things that I'm really excited about with the Green New Deal is the federal jobs guarantee. That would be huge and just completely transformative for my district, because if people can work 40 hours a week at a good paying union job and then that supports their family, it lets them rent or buy a home, have a car, take 2 weeks of vacation or more every year and just have a decent life, then I think that really starts to address the pervasive despair that's all over the district. And it would just be a huge transformation.
All right. Now, you mentioned also earlier in this interview about single-payer healthcare, and in your campaign website, you talk about it. So I guess for our viewers and subscribers, can you explain why this is an important issue for you and why you're fighting for it?
It's an important issue. Personally for myself, I'm a small business owner. I pay for my own health insurance, and it's gone up. My premiums have gone up 20% in the last couple of years, while the healthcare has gotten worse. And my deductibles go up, the premium goes up, the amount of doctor's visits I get covered for a nominal rate goes down, the care goes down, the amount of stuff that's covered goes down. So it's just paying more and more for less and less care. And, people talk about the American dream and our great entrepreneurial spirit and all of that. Well, what would help us be more entrepreneurial and, innovation and all of that for innovation would be to let people be business owners and not have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for crappy care, and be able to know they're safe and secure and there's a little bit of a safety net. And then the other thing is that, so my Oma, which is German for grandma, and half of my family's German, they all live over there. My Oma lived in Germany. She was, I think, 14 when World War II ended. She got married in her 20s. And then her husband, my grandfather, who I never met, died when she was in her 30s. And she had a son, my uncle, who has a very serious genetic disease that could have caused him to go blind. And then my mother. And She did not have a high school education. She didn't have a job. She was just living off her husband's pension after he died, and then was supposed to raise these two kids, one of them with a serious illness that could cause him to go blind. Well, he didn't go blind, and they lived a fine life. Both of her kids went on to get an education and have good careers, and she was able to live into her home into her 80s, even when she needed medical care. The reason she was able to do all of that is because they have a real safety net there. They have a healthcare system that really takes care of people. And as a society, they show through their policies that they actually care about seniors. And that's the thing, we say respect your elders or seniors and all of that stuff. Well, it's not respecting your elders to force them to live on $800 a month and choose between their prescriptions and paying for their housing. In somewhere like Germany, where my Oma, who did not have a high school education and had to supplement her deceased husband's pension by taking in sewing, the reason that they were able to have a good life and my uncle didn't go blind is because they have a good healthcare system. And that's what we need here. I've heard about seniors in my district having to choose between, should I pay for food or for my prescriptions? Should I pay for rent or my prescriptions? That kind of thing. And it's just completely immoral. Single payer Medicare for all is the way to go. I do not support a public option. I'm on the board of Whole Washington, which is a group in Washington state that's working to get statewide single payer. And that's what I really believe would be best. I'm not going to go for any of these watered down, Medicare for all who choose Pete Buttigieg BS type plans.
All right. Well, it's good to know where you. No, it's really good to know where you stand on single payer healthcare, because compared to the rest of the international community, the United States is lagging behind. And we said this on our show: one bad day, and you're stuck with some medical bill, and there's a very good chance you could lose your home, your car, your family, your job, and you're out in the streets. And it's a real sad fact here in the United States, and we need to really have a conversation about single payer health care. But also on your website, you talk about housing as a human right. Can you elaborate in detail why this is an issue that you're fighting for, especially in the 6th Congressional District in Washington State?
Yeah, it's a big issue, housing across the entire district. In Tacoma, we have a lot of issues with gentrification. In the more rural parts of the district, we have people moving from Seattle and California and driving up housing prices. So people have to move further and further out or live in worse and worse quality places. And then homelessness is a serious problem across the district. In Aberdeen, for example, it's a town of 16,000. They have 1,000 homeless people. And 100 of them were living in an encampment by the river. And the city has spent over a year just continually harassing them, passing laws that you can't sit, stand, or lie down anywhere in the town of Aberdeen, but you also can't sleep by the river, and you also can't stay in the homeless shelters during the day. So essentially you have to just be perpetually wandering or just like huddle in the alleyways, just trying to criminalize homelessness. It's an issue across the entire district. I've been involved with the Tacoma Tenants Organizing Committee and Tacoma DSA, which have successfully won more tenant protections in Tacoma, and those tenant protections then inspired some protections that were enacted statewide. And those were initiated because there was, for example, there was a building called the Tiki Apartments. That was where a lot of people lived who have disabilities, who are in recovery from addiction, who have felonies or poor on disability. They couldn't afford anywhere else. And this was essentially their stopgap between being in a home and not being in a home. And then a Seattle developer came in, bought the building, gave them all a 20-day eviction notice after some of them had lived there for over a decade, and so that he could renovate it and double and triple the rents. And out of that formed the Tacoma Tenants Organizing Committee. And it's just a huge deal. I think I hear again and again from politicians, centrist established politicians that, housing, well, we've got to be fair. And, the city of Tacoma gives a lot of tax breaks to developers to build completely unaffordable housing. And it's always treated from the perspective as it's an unspoken assumption that the purpose of housing is to make people money. And we've got to make sure that the developers and landlords can keep making money. But what we're talking about is a home, and homes are places people live in. And that should be the primary way that we're looking at it, and the thing that's informing all of our policy. And so in Congress, I'm going to fight for national universal rent control, which we've had in this country before. It's not a radical idea. We had it during World War II, and President Nixon also instituted national rent control, and President Truman wanted it as well. And then an investment into 12 million new units of public and social housing in the next 10 years, because that's how much we're short. And I would really fight for those policies, and housing as a human right means backing it up with those real policies. And, if there are small landlords who own a couple properties and they are doing that as part of their retirement plan, so that not all their investments are in the stock market, something like that. Sure, that's reasonable. They're not typically the ones who are causing such tremendous problems for people. After the Tiki apartments, those people were evicted. 2 of them have died. And so housing is really a matter of life and death. And so for people who are small landlords that own a few properties, that's really not the people we're targeting. Some people who own properties are my friends. They're not evil. They're not terrible. Like, they own this as part of their retirement plan. What we're talking about is really like capping rent control. So it's that rent increases are at a reasonable level, but those landlords can still, pay their expenses and make a little bit of money off it, but have the focus really be on making sure that everybody is housed and eliminating homelessness.
All right, and I think that's a very good note to end it on. I definitely want to do a follow-up interview with you because you definitely have a lot of other key progressive issues that we would like to elaborate more on. But for our viewers and subscribers, if they want to learn more about you or find you on social media, where can they find your campaign website and your social media platforms in case they want to engage or volunteer or help donate to your campaign?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. My website is rebeccaforwa.com, REBECCAFORWA. And that's also my social media handle on Rebecca for WA on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. What I could really use right now, 2 major things: volunteers. You can volunteer remotely at this point. I need a lot of help with research and other kind of tech things to do online. Later, it'll be text banking, phone banking. But if you live anywhere in the country, you can absolutely help. If you're in district, you can help with even more stuff like canvassing. And the second thing that's extremely important is donations, because I don't take any corporate PAC or lobbyist money. Unlike my opponent, I think about 6% of his donations were small dollar. About 98% of mine are so far. And as of this, when we're doing this interview, I have my first FEC filing deadline coming up in just 8 days. And a lot of people look at that first quarter fundraising report to decide whether I'm a serious and viable candidate. And, that's kind of annoying. That's the way it is, but that's the way it is. And so if you have some of these progressive groups and donors who want to support me, they'll look at that to decide whether the campaign is worth giving their support to. So essentially, if you can donate anything at all right now, it would be a huge help because I'm funded not by corporations at all. The link to go straight to do that is rebeccaforwa.com/donate.
All right. Well, that's a very fantastic note to end it on. I definitely want to do a follow-up interview with you. And I think this battle, as you said, in the 6th Congressional District in Washington State is going to be a key battleground. And I wish you and your entire campaign all the best in regards to pushing forward and getting your message out there to the potential voters. And on a special side note, you are the first guest we are interviewing here at our brand new studio. So Rebecca Parson, thank you so much for joining us. This is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media. Peace, and let us all do what we can to build a better future.